Hello, welcome to the Unit 1 Test Study Guide for Pre-Algebra. I am going to be filling out your study guide, and you should be filling it out along with me as we go. If I'm going too fast, or if you need to understand something, you may always pause and rewind. Do not fast forward to the video because you think you know it all. Not a great way to review. Okay, let's get to it. First thing that we're going to do is we are going to read the directions. They say that you want to complete the chart. So the first one is 4 and 38/100ths, that is repeating. Is that number rational or is that number irrational? Well, as it turns out, it is rational. Well, why? Remember, we discussed how rational numbers can be written as fractions. Well, even though it is repeating, it can be written as a fraction. We will, later on, if you glance down, be changing a repeating decimal into a fraction. So, it can be written as a fraction. It is rational. Underneath that, we have this symbol right here. That symbol is pi. Pi is irrational. You cannot write it as a fraction. It neither terminates or repeats if you made it into decimal form. So, not a fraction. After that, we have -14/9. Don't let that fool you. It doesn't matter that it's negative, and it doesn't matter that it is improper. It is still a fraction, therefore it is still rational. So it can be written as a fraction. So therefore it is rational. Hey, and the same with the one right below. One right below, you have 1/5. 1/5 is also rational. It already is a fraction. Easy enough. The next three questions should look vaguely familiar given they were on your earlier quiz. It says convert each of the following. We want to deal with this one first. We want to change that decimal into a fraction. Hang on, it says simplest form. Best way to do that is to read that decimal out loud. That decimal is 68/100ths. Now, at this point in the test, you can use a calculator, and you should. In the calculator, remember there is that ND button, numerator over denominator. Place that into the calculator and it will simplify it for you. Go ahead and practice at this time. What you will get is 17/25ths. I would remember that calculator trick for tomorrow. Next, change the decimal into a fraction. Again, it needs to be in that simplest form. Let's recall that that is a repeating decimal, so we're going to write it as 0.7 with a line over it. That makes it way easier for you to read. You should know that that place value is 7/10. But 7/10 is not the same thing as 7 repeating. What you need to do, if you recall, is subtract 1 from the denominator. So what you actually have is 7 ninths. Don't believe me? Drop it into your calculator for a second. Take 7 divided by 9. See what you get? It's the same thing. Although your calculator will round at the end because your calculator doesn't hold all of the numbers in the world. Last, we're going to change a fraction into a decimal. Easy peasy, folks. What does the fraction bar tell you to do? It tells you to divide. I am going to take 13 divided by 20. Numerator goes in first, denominator goes in second, and what you should get is 65 hundredths. Next on the list, we have order these numbers from least to greatest. Well, we have these interesting lines right in here. As you recall, those lines are called absolute value. It is asking you how far are they from 0. So if I am standing on -8, I am 8 steps away from 0. So I'm going to convert that to 8. Then the next one is 0, -6. If I'm standing on 9, how far am I from 0? 9 steps. And finally, it's -1. Now, all I did was convert those numbers. I have not placed them in order from least to greatest. I can do that at this point. And I'm looking at those numbers. The numbers that has the least value is -6. I'm going to cross it off because I used it. The next number that has the least value is -1. Then 0. Well, originally the number was the absolute value of -8, but really you know that that is 8. And finally, the absolute value of -9 is really 9. So there you go. You have your numbers ordered from least to greatest. Next part. Evaluate each expression for A equals 4, B equals -6. Oh, and there's this fabulous little thing here that says, show all work, which means you're not going to do it in your head. If you do, you will have points taken off. Okay, so let's start over to the left right here. You've been given these values. A happens to be 4, so replace A with 4, plus the absolute value of B, which is -6. That is rewriting it, but now I need to figure out what is the absolute value of -6. So it turns into 4 plus 6. 4 plus 6 is 10. Excellent. Next question. 2, and since there's no symbol in between the absolute value and B, that means multiplied by absolute value of B, plus A. So it would be 2 absolute value of -6 plus 4, which turns into 2 times +6 plus 4. Order of operations, 2 times 6 is 12, plus 4 is 16. Last question on this page. Don't let it intimidate you. Sure, it's the absolute value of -B, So you have your negative sign written down, and then for b, you would put in -6. Before you even get started, you have two negative signs. Boom, it's positive. But you would know that it would be positive anyway, because once you figure out what the absolute value is, it's just 6. Wonderful. Before we move on to the next page, I have a real quick question. Why should you never give Elsa a balloon? Because she'll let it go. Get it? It's pretty funny. I have another question. How do you make a tissue dance? By putting a little boogie in it. All right, next page. Thanks for putting up with that. On this side, on the back, I hope you see at the top, it says no calculator on this part. What you'll do tomorrow is you will take the first page, turn it in along with your calculator, and then you'll get the second page. So all of the back part of this, you will not be allowed to use your calculators, so you're really going to have to remember the rules. I don't know if you want to, on the top, maybe write the rules. Sometimes jotting it down is extremely helpful. Let's get started. Your first question, right in here, you have 2 plus -6. Always ask your question for adding and subtracting if the signs are the same or if they are different. I know that there is not a symbol in front of that 2, so you can assume that it is positive. But the symbol directly in front of that -6 is -6. Signs are different. You find the difference. You happen to have more negatives than positives, so your answer is -4. Next, -5 plus -1. Those symbols are the same, so you find the sum, which is -6. You had only negatives to deal with. Same situation for this question as this question. Their signs are different, but in this one, you started off with more positives than negatives. So your answer is just a +4. This question. If there's no sign, it's 2 minus 48. Now remember, we had that whole discussion about negative signs and subtraction signs. They all mean take away. It is take away 48 from your +2. Think about it this way. It's like you have $2. You wrote a check for 48. In your bank account, it is -46. Bummer for you. The following question, again, this is like saying take away 40, take away 6. You have taken away 46. Finally, the last one in this section, you have 32 minus -3. Something should be screaming out at you right now. It's right in here. You have 2 negatives almost touching. They become a positive, so it's like a little kid question. 32 plus 3, which is 35. The highest temperature recorded in the town of Westgate this summer was 101 degrees Fahrenheit. Last winter, the lowest temperature ever recorded was -9 degrees Fahrenheit. Find the, oh, here it is, difference between these extremes. Write the expression and solve. So you're not just writing a number down, you got to tell me where that number came from. The highest temperature was 101. You are finding the difference, so you are subtracting -9. So what ends up happening, you add them together. And your final answer is 110 degrees Fahrenheit. You would have to take 110 steps to get all the way from -9 up to 101. Find each product or quotient. Show all work. There's not a ton of work to show here, but you definitely need to remember that the rules have changed. A negative times a negative is a positive. Positive times a positive is a positive. A negative times a positive is a negative, and a positive times a negative is a negative. Same thing with division. All right, here we go. First one, negative times a negative, that means it's going to be positive. And 4 times 7 is 28. In the following question, we have a good old point there, dot, that indicates multiplication. We have one positive and one negative. So that means your answer is going to be negative. And 5 times 6 is 30. Don't know why I wrote it that large. Last question on this row. Recall if a number is hanging out outside of a parentheses with no symbol in between. Again, we are at multiplication. I have a positive 4 times a negative 2, so that gives us -8. Switching over to division. 77 divided by -11. A positive divided by a negative is -7. Now this little bitty one right here, hopefully it shows up a little bigger on your paper. We have -42 divided by -7. Well, they cancel those negatives out, which means your answer is a +6. Last one of these. -24 divided by 0. This might be new to you, but even if you put it in your calculator, even if you found the smartest mathematician in the world, you cannot, looks like cannot, that's 2 N's there. You cannot divide by 0. It's just not going to happen for you. Think about it like this. If I had a cake and I divided it into 0 parts, you just can't do that. You still have a whole cake. So you cannot divide by 0. Not happening ever, 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 ever. Ever. Let's talk about Scuba Steve here. A scuba diver descends 5 feet per minute. Where are they after 4 minutes? There should be a keyword in there that you instantly are drawn to. Descend. Descend is going to help you recognize that that's going to be a -5 per minute. But after 4 minutes, are we going to add 4 minutes? Now, I think multiplying would be the better answer. So you have negative 5 times 4, which is negative 20 feet per minute. Awesome. Great work on this. Remember, if there is any part of this that you don't understand, let's rewind and watch that part. If you still have trouble in class, you can ask Mrs. Reynolds for help. At this time, you need to get a blank study guide from Mrs. Reynolds. Put this study guide and your computer away and try it on your own. See how you do.